Welcome back to my episode reviews of the second chapter of the Transformers War for Cybertron trilogy. Today, we're taking a look at the fifth episode of Earthrise. This episode begins with Alpha Trion, the real Alpha Trion, not just a hologram in a vision like we saw back in Siege. And we see him carrying the Matrix of Leadership with him, in like a clear briefcase or something, as well as some kind of staff, which we'll learn later is the staff of Solus Prime. Which, I thought Solus had a hammer, not a staff. I mean, it does kind of look like a hammer too, so... Correction. After doing a little bit of research, it looks like this staff, as it's called, might actually be the Forge of Solus Prime, as it appears in the Covenant of Primus book, and in the Power of the Primes machinima cartoon. Although I'm not 100% sure that this staff and the Forge of Solus Prime are the same thing. I mean, in the Prime cartoon, they use the Forge to make the Darksaber and rebuild the Starsaber. Whereas in this cartoon, Alpha Trion uses this staff to banish Skylinks. So again, someone will have to correct me whether this staff and the Forge of Solus Prime are the same thing. But this does look like what she's pictured with in the Covenant of Primus. But B, why does Alpha Trion have it instead of Solus herself? Isn't Alpha Trion supposed to have a book and a quill? More on that at the end of the video. Well, we also have Skylinks here. Yes, Skylinks is in this show too. And no, I totally wasn't spoiled on this because people posted images of him and some of the other characters who appear in this episode on Twitter before I was able to watch this episode. No, nobody would do something dumb like that when the show has barely been out a day. But yes, Skylinks seems to be his arrogant self, just like in G1. But this Skylinks is a little different as he desires the Matrix of Leadership for himself. And Alpha Trion uses the Staff of Solus to banish him. Back in the present, Wheeljack confirms that they are in Unspace. Yes, just like Cyberverse. I totally called it. Man, how much are they going to borrow from Cyberverse? It is then that the Autobots spot Skylinks, and Optimus reveals that they are actually in the Dead universe. Okay, so this is both Unspace from Transformers Cyberverse and the Dead universe from the IDW comic books. Are they really just trying to pull everything into this one show? Skylinks then transports Optimus Prime and himself to somewhere, but wherever they are, we can see what looks like statues of the original 13. I can definitely recognize Megatronus and Solus Prime here, as they look just like their versions from the previous Machinima Prime Wars trilogy, Power of the Primes cartoon. Oh, and as it turns out, Megatron did somehow escape the explosion of the space bridge. Did Soundwave and the others survive too? I assume so. Megatron follows the Ark into the rift into Unspace, aka the Dead Universe, where he's then met by Galvatron. Yes, Galvatron also appears in this episode. It's too bad that the thumbnail on Netflix for this episode totally spoils this. Come on, Netflix. Can't you guys either use a less spoilerific thumbnail or make some kind of option to hide the thumbnails or something? But yes, Galvatron appears in what feels like one part 86 movie reference and one part video game. Seriously, I almost picked up the controller because I thought I was about to have to play a game. Speaking of which, having a time-hopping Galvatron trying to change the past totally reminds me of the Japanese exclusive PS2 game Transformers Tatakai Call of the Future, which you can watch my playthrough here. Seriously, it's worth checking out just for the hilariously bad voice acting alone. Galvatron here is played by the same voice actor as Megatron, but he changes it just enough that it's different enough so it doesn't just sound like Megatron is talking to himself. Which he kind of is, because this Galvatron is Megatron from the future, or at least an alternate one. Also, it may be just me, but at times it feels like Jason Momoa is doing a little bit of a Leonard Nimoy impression. Maybe he was going for that movie Galvatron. What do you think?
I will rip open Ultra Magnus and every other Autobot until the Matrix has been destroyed. I'm here to change the future. To change your destiny.
Galvatron wants Megatron to kill Optimus Prime and take the Matrix of Leadership for himself, which sounds an awful lot like Megatron X. Again, it seems like the writers here are borrowing from Cyberverse. Meanwhile, Skylinks takes Optimus on what is basically a vision quest, in which we finally get to see Ultra Magnus, Optimus Prime, Megatron, and Alpha Trion all together before the war. As well as another scene taken right out of the G1 movie, Prime's death. He even turns gray and everything. Honestly, I'm kind of surprised that Hot Rod, Ultra Magnus, RC, Perceptor, and all of them aren't here. And Skylinks mentions the next Prime, possibly hinting at Rodimus Prime? We also see a vision of Nemesis Prime, which I'm kind of disappointed that Nemesis Prime turned out to be just a vision and not an actual character. Who knows? We've already got time travel and other universes. There's always the possibility that we might see a Nemesis Prime from an alternate universe show up in the future. But yeah, with all these visions of what may be, and it may be because Christmas just passed, but is anyone else getting a little bit of a Ghost of Christmas Future vibe here? While Optimus completes his Jedi training, Galvatron is coaching Megatron in the ways of the Sith.
I'm a slave to my timeline, even here. That's why you need to learn now, before he comes for me, before it's too late.
Maybe it's because I was still thinking of the Japanese PS2 game, but I initially thought that Galvatron was referring to Rodimus Prime. Like Rodimus was going to show up and try to stop Galvatron. But then I soon realized who he was really referring to.
I am from a place of only agony.
When Optimus unleashed the power of the Matrix, it was really disappointing that he didn't actually open up his chest so that we could see the Matrix. Seriously, they already modeled it. Did they not make that part of Optimus's character model? Megatron tries to stop the Ark.
Unleash a plague of hatred upon them.
While they certainly do reference the hate plague, it functions more like a weapon rather than a disease. And sadly, Skylinks sacrifices himself in order to save the Ark. And Galvatron is pulled back to the future by none other than Unicron. Again, it would have been really dumb if someone decided to post this big spoiler on Twitter when the show's not even been out a day. I like Unicron's voice here.
You'll suffer for this moment of treachery.
He sounds well enough like Orson Welles.
I am Unicron.
At least from what I can hear of him. Again, I don't know if it's just me, but I had a hard time hearing him here. I mean, this is Unicron. The guy's a planet. He should be rocking all channels with his big booming voice. But the biggest surprise was one that I didn't get spoiled on. Just before Galvatron goes, he shows us the Golden Disc. Oh man, I cannot tell you how excited I was to see the freaking Golden Disc in a Transformers cartoon again. I cannot wait for Kingdom now. And we conclude with the Ark and the Nemesis floating above what looks to be Earth. Yes, we have finally arrived. The Autobots and Decepticons have made it to Earth, where they will no doubt begin their search for the Allspark and set up for the next chapter of this War for Cybertron trilogy. But that's for the next episode. I still want to talk about this one. Oh man, what an amazing episode! I loved it. Definitely the best one in this show so far. All this talk about possible futures definitely seems to be hinting at the gimmick for the Kingdom line with its collectible cards that reveal a character's possible future when you peel the sticker off. I'll be interested to see exactly how this plays into the next chapter of the show when it eventually comes out. And like I mentioned at the beginning of this video, Alpha Trion is supposed to have a book and a quill. The book is actually the Covenant of Primus, a book which is supposed to chronicle the history of the Transformers, both the past and the future. Think Gray's Sports Almanac from Back to the Future Part 2 combined with the Bible. And it's funny how the Covenant of Primus first appeared in Beast Wars, and now we're leading into Kingdom, the Beast Wars themed part of this trilogy. And the quill of Alpha Trion is another powerful artifact that apparently has the power to change the future itself. So I wonder, will the Transformers come across these legendary artifacts as well, and use them to change history? Or is that what the Golden Disc's role will be in Kingdom, like it was in Beast Wars? I definitely have high hopes after this episode. I suspect that we will see Galvatron again in Kingdom. They did make a whole character model for him after all, unlike Unicron, who was just a picture. Supposedly he's getting a toy in Kingdom, but as of the making of this video, nothing has been revealed, other than that initial teaser that had all the different characters on it. So yeah, I loved this episode. Maybe the best in this chapter. Now I want to know, what did they do between Siege and Earthrise that every episode this season has been better than the previous one? Did they change writers or something? Well, we've still got one last episode to go. I cannot wait. So then, what about you? What did you think of this episode of Earthrise? Let me know down in the comments. Remember to like, subscribe, and do all that other fun stuff. And I'll see you back here soon for what will be the final episode of this amazing chapter of the Transformers War for Cybertron trilogy. See you then.